Okay, today we are going to look at multiplication and division rules. But first, I want to talk about a couple of things before we dive into that. The first thing I want to discuss is looking at input and output tables and making sure we understand all the parts that needed to be taken into consideration. So, input, this is what you start with. Output, this is what you finish with. So some sort of thing happens between here and here. So this one is a subtraction one because we're going from 22 to 17. The numbers are getting smaller. So that means it is a subtraction rule that is happening. So our rule is subtraction based, okay? So when I ask for the rule written as an equation, I do not mean the rule is subtract 5. That is not an equation, okay? So, not an equation, okay? When I ask for the rule written as an equation, what I want you to do is x subtract 5 minus 5 equals y. Input, rule equals output. That's what I want. So when I ask for the rule, written as an equation, I want it like this, okay? Also, when I ask for the next terms, I don't just want the last one. So if I said, what are the next 4 terms? I don't want you to just tell me what the fourth one would be. I want all of them up until that point, okay? So 30, take away 5, gives me 25. 34, take away 5, gives me 29. 38, take away 5, gives me 33. I want all of them, okay? So it's really important that you take that into consideration when you're doing your work today. When I ask for rules written as equations, I want it like this. And when I ask for the next terms, I want all of them, okay? So especially on your exit slips, I don't want just this or just this. I want both, okay? So here is what we're going to do. You should have page 445 ripped out of your book. We're going to use that today to do our multiplication and division rules. So this works exactly the same way as it does with the addition and subtraction. The only difference is we're working with multiplication and division now. So let's go ahead and look at this. Charles washes cars to earn money. If he washes 2 cars, he earns $12. If he washes 6 cars, he earns $36. Write an equation to describe the pattern, then use the equation to find how much money Charles will earn if he washes 8, 10, and 12 cars. Okay? So, let's see. He is going from 2 to 12, all right? So, I'm going to ask myself, what is the difference going on here? Well, there's 2 things that are happening here. I'm either going to be adding 10, or I could multiply by 2 to get this too. So, I need to see what's consistent with the next one. All right? So, I'm sorry, I don't know why I said multiply by 2. That doesn't make sense. So, I could multiply by 6 to get that. Okay. 4 plus 10, does that equal 24? No. Okay, so it can't be a subtraction or an addition rule. 4 times 6 works again, though. All right, so far that multiplication rule is looking good. Let's check it out here. 6 times 6, does that equal 36? Yes, it does. So our rule is involving multiplying by 6. The input times 6 equals B, the output. All right, so I can go ahead and use this rule to finish out this pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write the equation over here. Input A times 6 equals B, output. So I'm going to use that to go ahead and find out what the next 3 outputs are going to be. So A times 6 equals B. So A in this case is 8. So 8 times 6 is 48. So I'm going to put 48 here. 10 times 6, that is going to give me 60. And then 12 times 6, that's going to give me 84. Okay? So that's what the next 3 values are. So I have all my 3 values and I have my equation that represents my rule here. All right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have you try this next one on your own. Yes, I know there are some examples here. Use the example here to help you solve this. All right, so here they're saying it costs $4 for each box of crackers. The equation is shown below. Use the equation to complete the table. So I'm going from the total cost to the amount of boxes of crackers. So this is where paying attention here is really important. I'm taking my total cost and I'm trying to find out how many boxes of crackers I bought. Well, they told us here that our rule was to divide by 4. 4 divided by 4 gives us 1. So they're saying here that our rule is G divided by 4 gives me H. So 8 divided by 4 gives me 2. 12 divided by 4 gives me 3. 16 divided by 4 gives me 4. 20 divided by 4 gives me 5. 24 divided by 4 gives me 6. So by using this rule, I can determine how many boxes of crackers were bought based off of the total cost. Okay? All right, here's one more I want you to try on your own. It says, write an equation that describes the pattern. Then use the equation to find the next 3 output numbers. So I want both the equation, I want the next 3 output numbers, and I do want you to go ahead and describe a pattern you see. Okay? Go ahead and see if you can find a pattern as well. All right, so I need to go ahead and figure out what's going on here. So I can ask myself, okay, what's going on from 2 to 12? Okay, well, it does look like I'm multiplying by 6 again, but it also looks like I'm dividing by, or not dividing, but it could be adding by 10, okay? All right, let's look at this. Adding by 10, well, that's not going to work for here, but multiplying by 6 does, and multiplying by 6 here works as well. So it looks like that's what our rule is. W is my input, so W times 6, my rule, equals V, my output. Okay, so I'm going to use that to go ahead and solve this. So 8 times 6 gives me 48. 10 times 6 gives me 60. 12 times 6 gives me 84. So what's another pattern that I see in this chart? Well, I could say a lot of things actually, but one thing that I notice is that the input increases by 2, making the outputs increase by 12. All right, so that's what I noticed when I looked at it. I'm going to go ahead and have you practice one more quick one. Number 2 on page 447. So you're going to write the equation that describes the pattern and then use the equation to find the next 3 output numbers. Go ahead and try number 2 on your own. All right, so I'm seeing some increasing here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to figure out what's going on here. We're either multiplying by 5 or adding 4, okay? Let's see if that's consistent with here. Multiplying by 5 definitely works here. Adding 4, no, that doesn't work. So multiply by 5. 5 times 5 gives me 25. That's true. So my equation is m times 5 equals n, my output. I'm going to use my rule in my equation to go ahead and figure out the next outputs. 7 times 5 gives me 35. 9 times 5 gives me 45. And 11 times 5 gives me 55. All right? So just pay attention to the patterns. Figure out what the pattern is going on, and that'll help you figure out what the rule is. When you figured out the rule, write it as an equation. Input, rule equals output. And don't forget to do your next 3 terms. Make sure all that shows up when you do your work.